this cage, a split-second decision can change a career. But those decisions aren't accidents. They're calculations. Whether it's a championship veteran or a massive underdog, there's always a blueprint for victory. And we're here to find it. It's time to break down all that's happened, all that's coming up, and all that's in MMA's headlines. This is Fight IQ. And now, here's your host, Tom Albano.
Hey everybody, just bear with me for 5 minutes. It's been a very long day. In the meantime, I'm trying to get the show out on social media. It has been a very, I'm going to be very real with you guys, very hard last 36 hours. So I need to breathe. I'm going to be posting some stuff to social media, trying to get the show out. In the meantime, I'd like to welcome you all to another edition of Fight IQ. We have a bleep ton of stuff to get through. And I've only got like an hour 15. So we're going to try to get through as much as we can. If not, we'll see if we can do something else afterward. Right now, there has just been a lot of news that has been breaking over the last 24 hours, and I've been overloaded with some stuff here at the ETB network. So I'm trying to get a little piece for myself, trying to figure all this out right now. It has been a very hectic time. Obviously, I was on the air already last night doing ETB Lounge. I'm going to be very real with you guys. Toughen Up is going to get delayed again this week. Simply because I'm going to be by myself. And right now, with some work pressures that are going on for tomorrow, I cannot take on another thing. So I'm going to be by myself this week. Tough Enough will be recorded tomorrow. You guys will see it Wednesday night instead after press row, to help maybe alleviate myself from too much work at this point. Where did all that go? This is interesting. Hey, Nick Morgeson, if you are watching this show, can you check and see if the show is going out on the ETB Network X? Because I do not... Oh, wait, never mind. I see it. For some reason, it did not seem like it was going out. For some reason. I don't know why. Actually, yeah, okay, there it is. There it is. All right. Finally, all that is done. I apologize for the 5-minute delay. We are now here. We are now ready. Let me quickly run through everything that we need to run through here. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you get notified of everything here at the Empty the Bench Network. If you're watching us on the X platforms, thank you very much for that as well. And make sure you hit the like button, hit the quote tweet, the retweet or quote post, repost, whatever you call it these days. And then come over to our YouTube home, youtube.com/UTB network to help us over there. When you subscribe on the YouTube, remember to hit the bell, ring the bell, as we say in the MMA world, combat sports world, if you will, to get notified of everything that's going on here. I will be doing the whip around at the network this week. I'll be co-hosting ETB Sports tomorrow. Special start time, 1 p.m. Eastern, because there is still another week for me in the teaching world. So the summer hours have not started yet, but due to some network craziness that we've got, there is going to be some scheduling switch arounds for this week. So to help me out, like I said, Tough Enough's going to be delayed this week because I just simply do not have the time, considering everything else that's going on. We're going to aim for Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern. Do not set that in stone. Follow Fight IQ at Fight IQ ETB. We will let you know when the show is going to go out. So that way you guys who watch Tough are in the know as to what is going on. But right now, I promised you guys last week that we were going to have a Tuesday slot. I need one more week for that. One more week for that. We're going to try, put it this way. You're going to see it on Wednesday night. We're going to try starting episode 4. We're going to try to settle back for a Tuesday night slot like the old days. I'm not going to commit to it verbally at this point, but keep an eye on social media so that way you can be in the know on what is going to be the plan with Tough Enough. Because you can already tell, if those who know me, that I am just completely overwhelmed at this point. I'm going to be on MTGP as well this week. That's going to have a special start time of Friday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. All right. I think that's everything. And the social medias. Follow us again at Fight IQ ETB. That's important for those who are following along with Tough Enough, the Ultimate Fighter recap show that we do here at the ETB Network. Please follow Fight IQ ETB and at ETB Network so that way you can know when Tough Enough is going to air this week. And then follow me at social media at Thomas J. Albano. All right, there we go. All right, sorry, one more thing that was popping up. It has been crazy today. Let's dive in. We have a lot of headlines. We're done wasting time. We're going to try to get through as much as we can. The original plan was to start with the UFC 330 news. However, 2 major breaking news stories have happened within the last 24 hours. And unfortunately, we have to start with this. And this just breaks my heart because all of you know who have followed me and know me know I love Dustin Poirier. And unfortunately, this is a breaking news story that has come out within the last several hours. The event happened yesterday, but the news story did not come out until maybe 4 or 5 hours ago. Okay, 6 hours ago, according to TMZ. It is unclear at this point what has happened to Dustin Poirier in terms of getting arrested with the public drunkenness. Brett Okamoto for ESPN. Poirier, 37, was arrested and released on bail according to Clayton County court records. Details were not immediately available. Poirier posted to social media, quote, "Love you all. I'm working on myself." Dustin Poirier has publicly had an alcohol battle, and he revealed, okay, this is actually from Brett Okamoto's story, quote, "Poirier, who retired from MMA last July and later revealed he was on the road to sobriety, said in one post in November, quote, 'Been soul searching. I'm making some changes. Blessings on the journey.'" This is tough, man. There's no information as to what was with the public drunkenness. There's no information as to the context of where he was, what was going on, how the arrest ended up happening. We just have that quote from social media. And then you've got people like Colby Covington being the annoying Colby Covington that he is, and healing on him. And it breaks my heart because Dustin Poirier is one of the ultimate good guys of this sport. And I think he's done the right thing in terms of accountability, that he immediately took to social media and he didn't hide behind a PR team. He basically said, hey, this is on me. The conversation with his wife, his children, his family is going to be a very tough conversation as to everything that's going on. Alcohol addiction can be a killer, man. It really can be a killer. So my heart goes out to him, and I guess at this point I'm wondering if the stress of his recent, the fact that he retired just last year, if it's been all the stress of, his fight career over the years, or if this is just somebody who's struggling right now with the fact that he isn't fighting anymore. We're approaching the 1-year anniversary of his last fight, and, it's an unfortunate thing, but it is not the only time that we have heard of a situation where you have a fighter who is struggling after the end of his fight career. And that's why sometimes you see some of these fighters, fighting past the age where they're supposed to be fighting. That's why you see fighters who unfortunately have some outside the cage, outside fighting issues. And for whatever reason, be it for something maybe from his fighting days or something from his younger days, Dustin has been struggling with alcohol. And like I said, he's not hiding behind a PR team. He's being genuine. And like I said, he has admitted in the past to a struggle with alcohol addiction. Unfortunately, we still have no full details as to what has happened. Hopefully, very soon, we do find out some information about what has happened, so that way we can have a discussion about the events that have transpired. But right now, the only discussion that we can have is he's taking accountability. He's trying to work on himself. I wonder if now a stint in rehab is going to be next for Dustin. And I'm hoping for the best for him. It's tough when you have one, like I said, one of the good guys of the sport, and then you see a headline where one of the good guys of the sport is arrested. It's tough. Here's the other big story that's going on, and this is something that's going technically past the MMA sphere, so I might urge everybody at the ETV network to be listening up to this story for a potential story for their shows. But a massive Wall Street Journal story has now broken. It was the journalists over at the WSJ have been doing this investigation on Polymarket. That's that sports prediction market. A rival to Kalshi. Polymarket's actually the official prediction market for the UFC. You might have seen in their recent broadcasts, at least since moving over to Paramount, that they don't have the fight odds for. I mean, they do have the DraftKings parlays and bets. You see those segments, but you also have now on the what do you call it? Little box at the bottom. I guess fighter bug. You can't call it a score bug because there's no scoring. Yeah, the scoring comes after the fight with the judges. So it's not really a score bug in the traditional sense, but I guess if we can call it a word, we can call it a score bug. The UFC has Polymarket updated odds for, if you want to place some sort of prediction at some sort of percent of who is winning the fight. And that gets updated as the fight goes on. So they've been doing stuff with Polymarket, the UFC. And now there's this investigation from the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal's investigative team is alleging that Polymarket has paid social media content creators to produce these fake simulated videos that show off massive financial gains, which are fake. And the purpose of it is to lure users onto its platform. Basically, a sort of false advertising, if you will. Polymarket, in a statement, has said that they have officially launched an internal probe or some sort of audit, if you will. Either way, just not a very good look for somebody who is one of the UFC's newest and biggest corporate sponsors. You know, there have been some sketchy sponsors in MMA. And if you think back to the days of, the days of old in the 90s, actually more primarily the 2000s, when MMA was first gaining a little bit of traction, and you saw some of the wild sponsors that these fighters had on their trunks and on their banners. But now, even in the mainstream world, you've got a sketchy sponsor now in terms of Polymarket. Now, I know all the Polymarket, sports prediction market. It's a easy way for you to make some money, and it's all and this just goes back. This goes back to something I said last night on my ETV Lounge appearance. You think to how sports gambling has basically taken a hold of the world, at least of America. And now you see it such in the mainstream that even when you have all these things about, we were talking about the NCAA. We're talking about the Brendan Sorsby situation. And again, we talk about, even when we're talking about Pete Rose months and months ago, at least I would, with, Nick Mortensen and company here at the network. Yeah, we talk about how bad it is what they're doing, but then at the same time, this segment of this sports broadcast is brought to you by FanDuel. This section of this sports broadcast is brought to you by DraftKings. This section is brought to you by Polymarket. Like, it's actually kind of ridiculous that if they're forcing so much sports betting in the face, it's like sometimes you wonder if we would have been better off if that ruling from 10 or so years ago, giving the states control of the legality of sports gambling. It's almost like, do you wish that maybe that never happened, and that it was just a big federal shutdown and everything was just, very quiet, hush, hush kind of sports gambling like it was in the days of old? Because it feels like it's always something now. And now you've got this ridiculousness with the false advertising, to the point where supposedly an internal probe, and I don't really know what an internal probe and internal auditing is going to really do for something like this. Will the UFC face pressure to distance themselves from the platform? No, they're not going to. That's the thing. I don't really see the UFC trying to distance themselves. Now, I will say it's not a good look for the UFC when you consider, things like we had the James Krause situation of 2022. We just had the Isaac Dulgarian situation from November, UFC Vegas 110. And now it's almost like every time there is some, and then all the stuff with Harry Mack from, the immediate aftermath of that. And now it's like every time there's a significant line movement, a significant odds movement within a UFC fight, all of a sudden everybody's eyebrow goes up like, oh, that looks a little suspicious. And now you see something like this, whether it be for false advertising or whatnot, what have you, you really think that that's going to do us any favors in terms of public image? But I don't know if Polymarket really cares. I don't know if the UFC really cares. And if the UFC and by stretch TKO are getting a ton of money from a company like Polymarket, then by all means, they're just going to continue to promote Poly Market regardless of this, and they're not going to feel any sort of pressure to distance themselves. All right, now let's get to the good stuff. Let's talk about the fun stuff. UFC 330 is now official. We had been hearing the rumors and rumblings for some time, but now it is official. The report came in. We've got a main event for UFC 330, Philadelphia, August 15th. The UFC welterweight title is on the line. Islam Makhachev will take on the challenger, Ian Garry. I think this is a great matchup. I think Ian Garry has been, such a rising star. We talk about Paddy Pimblett being such a rising star, in January when the Paramount deal first comes alive. And he's already in a main event slot, and he had all the surging momentum. Ian Garry has had a hell of a run himself since debuting the UFC back in 2021. Let's see. He's got in the UFC right now. He's 17-1, but in the UFC, he's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10-1 in the octagon. He's coming off the win over Bilal Muhammad, a former champion. He beat Carlos Prates at UFC Kansas City last year as well. His lone loss was to Shavkat Rakhmonov, UFC 310. That was a title eliminator, or number one contenders fight, if you will. But if I'm not mistaken, I believe Ian Garry took that fight on short notice. Yeah, Garry was scheduled to face Joaquin Buckley the very next week, but got pulled from that card because they needed somebody to fill in to face Shavkat. And he did. Credit to him. There was some real toughness displayed by Ian Garry there. And before that, wins over Michael Page, Jeff Neal Magny, finishes of Daniel Rodriguez, Kenan Song. So, very well deserved for somebody who has risen through the ranks like he has. Now, the other thing is, I don't know if Ian Machado was truly ready for what we're about to witness with Islam Makhachev. And by the way, Philadelphia just got such a big boost from last week. You know why? I forget if I addressed this or not, but if I can make a comparison to my boy James Lynch, when he's talking about stock risers and stock droppers after every card, and I made a comment in the chat for the UFC White House card, but Islam Makhachev, very quietly, even though he didn't compete on the card, was a stock riser when it came to that card as well, because now that Ilia Topuria lost, now that Alex Pereira failed in his bid to get a championship in the third weight class, I don't think there can be any argument right now that Islam Makhachev is not the top pound-for-pound fighter in the world at this point. He's won in multiple weight classes like those two. He's only got one loss, similar to what you saw with Ilia Topuria, and that was earlier in Islam Makhachev's career. So, I don't think it's that damaging when all things considered. And Islam Makhachev, by the way, in this fight against Ian Garry, if he wins this fight, that's going to be 17 straight wins in the UFC. That's going to be an all-time UFC record. Right now, he is tied for the longest win streak in UFC history. Should have made that a trivia question, but I didn't know about that until I just came across something about that. But the answer to that would have been questioned was Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva also won 16 fights in a row. I mean, Ian Garry is a great striker. He uses his body well. He can work from distance well, especially with his striking. But Islam Makhachev obviously is going to have a lot of takedown power. He is going to be relentless with his takedown. He is going to be relentless in trying to gain ground advantage, gain top position, and use it for everything that he's got going for him. And I don't know if Ian Garry is ready for that yet. My gut instinct is leaning towards, at this point, 2 months early, Islam Makhachev to retain the title and set that new UFC record with a decision win, a pretty clear decision win. Co-main event, it's also going to be a title fight, by the way. Mackenzie Dern is going to defend the strawweight championship against Gillian Robertson. The original plan was for Mackenzie Dern to face Weili Zhang. That was scheduled to be a title fight potentially for I shouldn't say that was scheduled, but Dana White admitted before the UFC White House card that he was hoping to get a strawweight title fight between Mackenzie Dern and former champion Weili Zhang involved in that White House card, but something happened on Zhang's side of things supposedly, and that fight ended up falling apart. And now at UFC 330 in Philadelphia, we're going to get Mackenzie Dern making her first strawweight title defense, not against Weili Zhang, but against the ever dangerous Gillian Robertson. I think this is a fantastic fight. I think it's disappointing when you consider her first title defense, Dern, could have been against an absolute queen over at strawweight, but Gillian Robertson lives up to her name of the Savage. She'll be coming in off the win over Amanda Lemos from March. And Gillian Robertson has won 5 in a row. Finish of Polyana Viana, decision win over Michelle Waters and Gomez, decision win over Luana Pinheiro, and a finish of Marina Rodriguez, in addition to the win over Lemos. Solid track record. She's dangerous. She's a hell of a submission finisher. I think this is going to be absolutely fun. And whoever wins this fight is probably going to be defending against Weili Zhang at some point in the future, maybe late 2026. Who knows? But then again, if the title fight takes place in August, maybe early 2027. I'm not picking anyone in the fight. The upsets this year have been great. Johnny, fair play. Very fair play. I mean, I'm just confident in Makhachev, considering his pound-for-pound nature. But you know what? You're right. We're just coming off a card, not this week, but the previous week, where Justin Gaethje pulled off one of the biggest upsets in UFC title fight history. So, can't really say too much to that. You know, cards have been, you're right, but the upsets this year have been kind of crazy. More information about UFC 330, by the way, as it comes out. But just those 2 title fights alone, I'm already excited for what could come. All right. Now, I do want to bring up something. I know normally I don't do anything in terms of screen sharing, unless it's Fight IQ, the Puncher's Chance, the betting pre-show that we do before every UFC card. Oh, which, by the way, that reminds me. Where is it? This coming weekend, obviously, we have UFC Baku, which is going to start on Saturday morning. Because of that, Fight IQ, the Puncher's Chance, that gambling show that I just mentioned, special start time, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Friday night. So do not look for Fight IQ, the Puncher's Chance on Saturday unless you're trying to get a last minute play in. Instead, you'll tune in for Fight IQ, the Puncher's Chance for the UFC betting pre-show on Friday night, the 26th, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. That'll be for this week because of the fact that they're in Baku. Next week, obviously this is for this coming week. Next week, obviously there will be no UFC card, so no Fight IQ, the Puncher's Chance. And then we will be with you the week after that, all week long in preparation for UFC 329 International Fight Week, the return of Conor McGregor as he takes on Max Holloway. But in the meantime, let me go and show. Let's do a little reaction together. Let me share my screen here. So the UFC has been teasing for quite some time that they were going to change some things about the UFC ranking system. And the UFC ranking system has been how do I want to describe it? A lightning rod of hate when it comes to all the criticism that surrounds the UFC rankings. Why are we having some trouble? Okay, there we go. So as you can see, this now says the meta UFC rankings. And the UFC commentary team talked about it a little as the main card was starting for UFC Vegas 119 on Saturday. And they described this as something that's not going to take popularity into account. They've described it as something that is not going to take, voting into account. There's no voting here. It's AI based, it's algorithm based, and it's going to be focused on fighter performance. So that means they're going to look at things like, who do you have wins over? Who do you have finishes over? What's your strength of schedule compared to the other contenders in your division? How many finishes do you have? It's going to take all those other things into account. And then on a weekly basis, the rankings will evolve and get reevaluated. And they still, I guess, are going to do some media rankings, because you see it right there, upper right corner. It says media ranking. Here is everything. Doesn't look like there was much movement at all, though. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit this button. We're going to switch over to the AI rankings and see what this does. I'm curious. So in the new meta rankings, Islam Makhachev is number 1 pound for pound. This has Alexander Volkanovski jumping over Peter Yan, become number 2 pound for pound. Justin Gaethje now on the board in the pound for pound. Alex Pereira falling 4 spots in the pound for pound. Ouch. Ciryl Gane is now entering the pound for pound rankings. He's entering at number 12. Interesting, I think. Flyweight, no movement. Bantamweight, it flipped Sean O'Malley and Umar Nurmagomedov. I don't really think that's much a big deal. I probably would have Sean O'Malley ranked number 2 above Umar Nurmagomedov right now. Kevin Vallejos is now 1 up on Steve Garcia at the featherweight rankings. It had Mauricio Rufy moving up 2 spots. Manuel Torres enters the rankings in the number 15 slot, and Tom Nolan, Beneil Dariush move up. Tom Nolan moving up. After that, I find that pretty interesting. Josh Hokit jumps over WCA, as he should have. Tyrell Fortune and Ante Delia, ranking number 9 and number 10. Derek Lewis, it says, falls 2 spots to number 11. I don't think this is exactly terrible. I think the fact that AI is running things, I want to see something. Hold on. Hattie Pimlet still ranked number 6. Okay, good. Oh, wait. Is this media? This is media panel. This is meta. So I guess they're not going to make any sort of ups or downs compared to last week, even though the rankings were different. Even with the different system of rankings. Hold on. Where's Patty Pimlet? This is Patty Pimlet ranked number 9? The meta rankings rank him number 9 compared to number 6 in the media? Hold on. What? I'm baffled. Let's see. has Alex Pereira ranked number 4 at heavyweight. The media rankings have Alex Pereira not ranked at heavyweight. I mean, he wasn't. It was his first heavyweight fight. Trying to see what else did I mean, that's just mind-boggling, man. Christian Leroy Duncan placed at number 11. Wow, Christian Leroy Duncan. This man goes from not being in the rankings at all to jumping up in the meta UFC rankings. At number 11. Oh, pardon me. No, there he is at 13. Still, he jumps from 13 to 11. Where's Bo Nickel? Bo Nickel jumps to number 12. Hang on a minute. What? Hold on. I just saw something that just... Now. Timeout. Because I take back everything that I said. What is this? Hold on. What in the world is this? Someone want to explain this to me? In case you see what I've highlighted here. Middleweight. Rainier de Ridder is ranked number 15. Ikram Aliskerov is ranked number 14. Ikram Aliskerov has fought, let's see, 5 times in the UFC. He was knocked out by Robert Whittaker. And then his other fights, I mean, he's got 3 solid knockouts. But Phil Hawes, Warley Alves, Andre Muniz, and Park Jun-young versus everything that Rainier de Ridder has done in his career. What the f? And then it gets better. Paulo Costa? Now, brother, I am not the biggest Paulo Costa fan in the world. But you're kidding me, right? So, Bo Nickel is ranked over Paulo Costa, a former title challenger. Somebody who, obviously we're talking a different weight class, but given what he did to Azamat Murzakanov, depending on what happens with Carlos Ulberg and his recovery from injury, could be challenging for an interim light heavyweight championship very soon. Bo Nickel is ranked above him. Wait, that also means that Bo Nickel is ranked above Rainier de Ridder, who last I checked, Bo Nickel was dominated by Rainier de Ridder. RDR is 15. I mean, Bo Nickel is 12 and RDR is 15. What? Now, I understand that RDR's reputation kind of went south when he quit on his stool at UFC Vancouver in October. But, brother, what do you mean to tell me that Bo Nickel is ranked? I think Bo Nickel should be ranked probably around that part of 14, 15, though. What in God's name? I don't know, people. I really don't know. This has Prates over Ian Machado Gary. I mean, interesting. That one's debatable, even though Gary's getting the next title shot. Granted, I mean, this is the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Do rankings really matter when it comes to the UFC? It feels like they just make the fights that they want to make. Fights that they think is going to make them the most money and get them the most eyeballs. So, maybe I'm being too harsh here, but something about some of that, man. Something about some of that just does not seem right at all. It feels very uncomfortable. Speaking of uncomfortable, speaking of Alex Pereira, let's talk about this. So Alex Pereira is going to be protesting and saying, hey, I don't think I deserve the loss to Ciryl Gane. Trying to find the exact quote here. Pereira said that he was... Okay, never mind. So Pereira had said that he was looking to appeal the loss, try to make it a no contest. Instead, he's going to drop it in hopes of getting an immediate rematch, which I don't know if he will. He is basically claiming that the White House card, Ciryl Gane hit him with several illegal blows, illegal strikes during the finishing sequence. You know, he got tagged and he was stumbling and he was down, and Gane was going to town on him. And basically what it seemed to happen was, the claim is, in Gane's ground and pound attack, he managed to hit the back of the head. Now, hitting the back of the head is definitely illegal. Having said that, if you're aiming for the side, then if you end up accidentally hitting the back of the head, you know, it's going to be pretty clear that it's not intentional. And when I looked at the footage back, when I looked at the finish of that fight back, I seem to be in the majority with other people. I see maybe 2 or 3 that slip and end up hitting the back of the head, but they don't look like they had any sort of true intention behind them. It seemed like it was truly not about a rabbit punch, more about trying to land on the top of the head, land on the side of the head in order to try and finish the fight. You know, I know he was calling out Herb Dean for being a coward, and I've shared my own thoughts about Herb Dean. I'm sure Zan has as well, that Herb Dean definitely, you know, he's seen as one of the legendary referees, but definitely not one of the cleanest referees. Definitely somebody who, you know, we talk about how we have issues with judges and refs and officials every single week. It's definitely one of the officials we have problems with more in this sport. But at the same time, I don't think I can doubt Herb Dean on this one. And Dana White comes to Alex Pereira's defense and saying if he was hitting the back of the head, then he was hitting the back of the head. You know, suggesting that Alex Pereira can't be any sort of liar or any sort of truth stretcher. But you know what? I think Herb Dean had a phenomenal response where he produced that video to show why he was innocent in all of this. Like I said, you know, I think as much as Pereira might have been hit once or twice in the back of the head, I don't think it was anything enough to warrant any sort of disqualification or warrant any sort of attempt to make this a no contest if he were to appeal here. I just hope, for the sake of the heavyweight division, that we get some sort of movement and we get some sort of excitement, because, man, I am bored sometimes just watching the heavyweight division. It's not even fun sometimes. But you know what else is not fun? But you know what else is not fun? When we had all this fear of what could potentially happen with UFC Freedom 250, we were all concerned about the weather. But all of a sudden now, supposedly, according to the Department of Justice, the FBI apparently stopped some sort of terrorist plot at UFC Freedom 250. Here's the full press release, part of the press release from the Department of Justice. The Justice Department announced today charges against 5 men for an alleged plot to carry out an attack to kill government officials and others attending the UFC Freedom 250 event held at the White House last Sunday. The FBI launched an investigation into the plot and identified a group of conspirators who procured weapons and made plans to carry out the attack. The FBI made arrests over the weekend in Ohio, Missouri, Nebraska, and California. The investigation remains ongoing. The statement adds, on June 10th, the FBI and our law enforcement partners became aware of potential threats to UFC America 250 event in Washington, D.C. involving individuals outside of the National Capital Region. And thanks to the rapid action of this FBI, our partners in the Department of Justice in a multi-state operation, multiple individuals are now in custody and allegedly planned attacks were stopped cold, said FBI Director Kash Patel. While the result represented the best of investigative work, it was also nothing out of the ordinary for this law enforcement team. That is just shocking, man. That is just absolutely shocking. I mean, good on the officials, though. This just feels surreal to me. You know, it almost feels like I'm talking about this. And the fact that we're talking about this and we're talking about the Poly Market story from before, I'm like questioning myself that this is actually an MMA podcast. Some cases, it almost feels like I'm talking about a true crime podcast or something here. It is insane. Now, obviously, they have to be insane to do some sort of event at the White House, but they managed to do it. They have to be some sort of insane. The people who were trying to commit the crime would have to be some sort of insane to think about traveling there and to do whatever it was that they were going to do. Take out all these government officials and all these attendees of the card. But they went up against somebody who is crazy and somebody who, you know, when you talk about a crazy event and you got a crazy man like Dana White helping to run the event, you've got a security apparatus that's going to be so multi-layered and so prepared that it's going to be hard to go up against. And for these people, yeah, it turned out to be hard to go up against. So major props to the federal officials and everybody who looked to play their role in what happened here, because they prevented quite the potential tragedy that could have happened. So big ups to all of them. Just a couple other UFC 250 fallout headlines. Is Justin Gaethje going to fight again in 2026? I mean, he's fought twice, like I mentioned before. Beat Paddy Pimblett, beat Ilia Topuria. Two fantastic matchups. Two really fantastic showdowns that have been going on in 2026. And he won interim title in one, and he won a undisputed title in one. Could he end up fighting a third time? If he does, it's probably not going to be till like December. He needs time to heal. He needs time to celebrate. And we need time to determine a contender for, you know, who's going to challenge for that championship. Especially if Justin Gaethje gets his way, because as you see here, he is claiming that he is not interested in facing Ilia Topuria in an immediate rematch. And he claims with the way that Ilia Topuria took a beating from him in that fight, that there shouldn't be any sort of rematch. And we have seen cases where when somebody who is a defending champion loses in a very quick, dominant fashion, especially if it's somebody that Dana doesn't like a Chris Cyborg or a Tyron Woodley. We've seen those instances where Dana says, I don't know if they should get the next shot. That was a pretty one-sided beating. If, you know, maybe he needs to take some time off and do a rebound fight or two before challenging in any sort of rematch. In Ilia Topuria, it wasn't the biggest beating. You saw Topuria had his moments. You saw Topuria nearly nail a couple of submission attempts. Although Gaethje was getting to him well, getting to him good, and constantly beating him to the punch, almost quite literally, in just about everything. So, if it's not Justin Gaethje, if it's not Ilia Topuria, who does Justin Gaethje defend against? Well, as it says right here, the other top four contenders, because Ilya's at 1, according to Meta, would be Arman Tsarukyan, which I know the two of them just traded some bad blood barbs when Gaethje rejected the gift from Sarukian. You have Oliveira, who Gaethje has lost to before. You have Max Holloway, who Gaethje has lost to before. And then you got Benoit Saint Denis, who is fantastic, who is a dog and a scrapper in his own right. So that would be a hell of a matchup. Now, if I click the media ranking button, what does it do for lightweight? This actually has the same. All right, so it seems like the AI and the real humans are actually aligned in this one, in terms of those being the top 5 and those being the potential options right now. I could see Arman Tsarukyan, but the problem is, as I mentioned a week or two ago, he's in the doghouse with the UFC. He has been constantly in the doghouse since he ended up dropping out on 1 day's notice from scheduled title fight with Islam when Islam was the lightweight champion. You've got Charles Oliveira, who Arman Tsarukyan versus Charles Oliveira. Oh man, that would be something else. And then you've got Arman Tsarukyan. Probably Justin. Yeah. Then you've got Max Holloway and Justin Gaethje. Oh my God, I would love to see the two of them tear the house down. They would tear the house down. I would love to see that happen again. Now, Oliveira and Tsarukyan, there was a rumor that they might face off, because I know Tsarukyan had mentioned in a way previous interview that he might go for the BMF. But again, Tsarukyan's been in the doghouse. He was in the doghouse for preventing dropping out 1 day's notice from what could have been a hell of a wrestling scrap. And then he's had the issues with, Dan, when he shoved Dan Hooker, the comments that he's made, the suspension that he got. Let's see. And now the fact that he's so focused on his work with the RAF. I've got a feeling he and the UFC are in such a bad relationship. Maybe Arman does leave. I would hope the UFC doesn't do that, but you know what? A couple of years ago, they let Muhammad Makhachev leave. So you never know. Who's not leaving, though? Iron Michael Chandler says, I ain't leaving. I can just picture that clip from Wolf of Wall Street now. I ain't bloody leaving. Michael Chandler is 2-6 since he made his way over from Bellator to the UFC in 2021. He's got that hell of a win in his UFC debut against Dan Hooker. He got the vicious knockout of Tony Ferguson. And everything else just seems to have gone wrong. And as much as I credit his heart and love him as an individual, love him as a fighter, the fact that he's 2-6 right now in the octagon and it seems like his best days are behind him, I feel like his last fight should have been a mention, should have been a suggestion to Chandler that maybe it's time for you to hang up the gloves and focus on the future of the sport. That's just my 2 cents. Michael Chandler is a fantastically talented individual, but again, you think back to what could have been if he had managed to get that first round finish of Charles Oliveira back at UFC 262 and he wins the UFC lightweight championship. Are we talking about a different career trajectory for Michael Chandler? Are we talking about different things in Michael Chandler's career and his path? And unfortunately, we're just never going to know. And it's a real shame, but I mean, I'm very concerned about what could happen with this man. What's going to happen to him in his next fight? It's going to be concerning. Trying to see what else. Okay. One other story we got to get to. Josh Hokit's comments. I've been trying to avoid this story because I hate mixing the sports and politics, even though sometimes it is impossible. Daniel Cormier has spoken out about it. Dana White has spoken out about it. They both hated what Josh Hokit did in his post-fight interview. He was being his cringy self, and it's like, yeah, okay, of course. I really wish he would go to somewhere else that wasn't the Colby Covington school of getting a promo, but here we are. And then Josh Hokit goes and throws everything away by calling Michelle Obama a man. Can we just... You know what I mean from Futurama? I don't want to live on this planet anymore. This goes back to something I said last week. Don't call me Trigger. Don't call me any of this. Don't call me so PC, but it's just... We just saw this kind of shtick with Colby freaking Covington. And Colby Covington is technically still around, mouthing his mouth off. Credit to Dana for calling Hogan. Yeah. I mean, Dana, you know what? I'm actually glad you brought that up, Nick, because Dana has always been an advocate of, I'm going to let the fighters say whatever I want because we're not in the business of hurting people's feelings. Oh, boo-hoo, and all of that. But there are just some things that you don't say. There are just some things that you really don't say. And yet, to counter that, Nick, yeah, Dana actually took a stand for it, but I don't think TKO cares. Because now they see somebody getting a lot of traction. I think TKO looks at this and says, hey, any publicity is good publicity. So you know what? Especially in a very weak heavyweight division, maybe if a rematch with Pereira doesn't work and a rematch with Gane doesn't work, a rematch with Aspinall doesn't work, maybe Gane's next opponent, sick it is to say, might be Josh Hokit. There's only so much free speech you can take before it affects the bottom line. Is it going to affect the bottom line? I agree with you, but just knowing who TKO is as a brand and knowing who Josh Hokit is as a fighter and character, are they going to stop? I don't think so. But my problem with it is, again, one, there are lines you don't cross. Two, we've seen this kind of shtick with Colby Covington, who just retired and is still pretty active on social media. So it's like you're just joining the angry mob. And number three, oh no, man, it's just ridiculous. It really is just ridiculous. And again, the heavyweight division, here was the point I was going to go to with three. It's so boring. That's my problem with Hokit. Obviously some of the things he says is terrible. But the other part of it is that he's boring to watch. The heavyweight division, which is supposed to be this glamour division, is so freaking boring. Give me somebody, please you know what? Here's what I'm going to say on it. Please, for the love of God, let's see Walter Walker continue to succeed. Please. That's a heavyweight I want to watch. That's a heavyweight who's exciting to me. Let's see Walter Walker. Where is he in the meta rankings? Hold on. He's ranked number 11. Okay, good. Give him a top 10 matchup. Let him succeed there. And let's continue to see Walter Walker succeed because that man is somebody who I would love to see as heavyweight champion one day. Hogan wants to run his mouth off like that. Go to WWE. I wouldn't be surprised, Nick. I just wouldn't be surprised if one day he did. So, don't look at me because I've got a feeling that potentially might just happen. But I think that is going to Well, it's not going to do it because there are more stories to talk about, but that's going to do it on the UFC Freedom 250 front. Hopefully, maybe there will be more stories about UFC Freedom 250. But you know what? Where else you can get some pretty cool stories? Nick Morgeson, you're going to get some pretty cool stories on the next edition of ETB Sports, because this coming week, actually tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern, special start time, it's myself and Nick Morgeson. The crew is back together. I'll be filling in for Zambando on ETV Sports, Empty the Bench, the flagship that started it all. Join Nick Morgeson and Zambando for Empty the Bench. We're emptying the tank on the biggest headlines in the sports world, from NFL coaching carousel developments to college football playoff predictions and major sports business mergers. This is where the foundation of the network meets the current pulse of the industry. Don't miss the show that defines our coverage, only on the Empty the Bench network. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETV network. All right. A couple of headlines to go through on, I could call this the boxing front, but the reality is this isn't really the boxing front. This is the Conor McGregor front. All right? So Conor McGregor is already claiming that he has his next fight lined up. He's claiming, obviously, we're going to see him in a couple of weeks when he's fighting Max Holloway in the main event of UFC 329. But he's claiming he now has a fight locked up for April 2027. Now, why is he doing this? Brian Windhorst style. Now, why is he doing this? I don't know if he does or not. This could just be Conor McGregor playing Conor McGregor, and it probably is. But, as far as I know, I haven't seen any other report out there that Conor McGregor has signed a new fight deal with the UFC. Which means, after this fight with Max Holloway in a couple weeks' time, he will only have one fight left on his contract. So maybe, just maybe, this is some sort of, this might be some sort of retirement angle. Or at the very least, if it's not a retirement angle, then what it is. And what it is definitely a matter of, the fact that he's going to be out of the contract. He is setting a concrete timeline for himself that he can be done with the UFC, deal, and then he can just take whatever it is that he wants. He can take whatever exhibition fight that he wants to do, or whatever BKFC he wants to do, because he is a part owner of BKFC. We will talk about BKFC in just a second. But you did just see, we did just see months ago Conor McGregor having a little run-in with Mike Perry, who is the King of Violence champion over in BKFC. Conor McGregor versus Mike Perry on BKFC, yeah, that's going to get so much viewership. It really will. It absolutely will. And it also helps in the regard that another big piece of information that he mentioned to Ariel Helwani, since we're going to continue on this BKFC deal. Big news has been going on with BKFC. So yesterday, Conor McGregor announced on the Ariel Helwani show that BKFC has signed a TV deal with Fox. More information on that is forthcoming. That they are planning a Las Vegas event. And news broke today that the BKFC is heading to Fenway Park. Like, as much as people might be turned off by the idea of legit bare knuckle fighting, and I was one of those that was like, when BKFC and this bare knuckle movement had started, I'm like, ugh. They're not going to have the protection of boxing or MMA gloves. It's going to be a little weird. BKFC has grown into such a brand that if you try to ignore them, you can't ignore them now. And the fact that they're going to have an event where they take over a Major League Baseball stadium, a classic, legendary baseball stadium, in a legendary town like Boston. I don't know if it can get better than that. Hats off to them. You can't ignore them now. The BKFC is just continuing to grow and grow, and it'll be interesting to see what happens if they do some sort of pay-per-view event in Las Vegas. It'll be interesting to see how they promote the BKFC in some sort of streaming deal or TV deal with Fox. I think this is phenomenal. Like, seriously. He is, first of all, Conor McGregor, even though some of this success does not all fall on Conor McGregor, that's a win as a promoter. That's a win as a promoter. The BKFC front office, the management team, should be celebrating at this point with such a victory. This is proving that this sport is not a gimmick. It is actually competing with traditional boxing. It is competing with the world of mixed martial arts. It is competing with the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And maybe these promotions like UFC, MVP, PFL might now have to look at BKFC. You know, if they didn't consider him a true competitor before, they thought, oh, that's just bare knuckle. That's a completely different world. Yeah, well, now they're going to have to view him as a business competitor. Because if they take advantage and they play their cards right, BKFC might be having quite the year of surgence in 2026 and beyond. Conor McGregor also had a little nugget that he mentioned on the Ariel Helwani show. Now, this isn't the first time we've talked about this news story. I kind of want to say that Zan and I talked about this a couple of years ago on the MMA Outsiders. But there was apparently a deal out there, according to Conor McGregor, so take things with a grain of salt, people, that he and legendary former boxing welterweight champion Terrence Crawford could have had a 2-fight deal worth $200 million, where they would fight one fight in the boxing ring under boxing rules, and then they would go over to the cage and do MMA rules. And this would have been interesting to see, but at the same time, I don't necessarily blame Terrence Crawford for this, because the simple fact is he would stand no chance in the world of MMA. He would need a lot of training to do something like what Conor McGregor does, and even with a long layoff, I think Conor McGregor would still have a clear advantage in an MMA fight. And even though Conor McGregor managed to take Floyd Mayweather to the 10th round in their matchup 9 years ago, boxing is a completely different pace. And the other thing, you really think Dana White would do something like co-promotion again? He's openly talked about how he hates co-promoting. He's openly talked about how he hated collaborating with Showtime and Steven Espinoza and Floyd Mayweather on the May-Mac matchup. So, yeah, I really don't think there could be anything good of this in terms of the idea of it being realistic, because there was no way in hell that this was really going to happen. There wasn't. If it wasn't going to be Terrence Crawford rejecting, it was probably going to be Dana White in the UFC going over to Conor, shoving the contract in his face, saying, hey, we're going to tell you what you can and can't do, even though Conor McGregor is at this point bigger than the UFC. It's true. But they would have shoved the contract and said, you can't do this. We're going to make the decision for you. And Dana would have looked at this, laughed at it, and said no. Because Dana hates co-promoting. Unless it's to do something like he did with Randy Couture when James Toney made his one UFC appearance, when he tried to talk about how boxers were better than MMA fighters. Maybe they never mind. I don't know where I was going with that one. Oh, now I remember where I was going with that one. maybe Dana's just saving something. They would have told McGregor sign it. No, Chrissy. What I'm saying is Dana wouldn't want to do anything like that. They would have put the contract in his face and said, the current contract. You're under contract to us. We're going to make the decisions. And Dana would have laughed and said, no, you're not doing something like this because I'm not going to risk you getting humiliated again in a boxing ring. But maybe Dana's planning for something else for Terrence Crawford. Maybe it's something with Zuffa boxing. Who knows? Or maybe he just wants to. Maybe Terrence Crawford tries something with MMA, and he puts him up against not Conor McGregor, but somebody like I don't know. Insert any fighter who's not busy doing something right now here. But actually, Christy, that does bring me. That actually brings me back to this one here because I also don't know if I believe Conor McGregor because I don't know if the UFC would be willing to book him in April 2027, but he's got one fight left on his contract without him signing a new fight, without him signing some sort of new exclusivity deal. I think there's definitely going to be some sort of issue with that. Maybe Conor McGregor is going to just have to sit on the sidelines for quite a while. Because I don't see them just letting Conor McGregor go. And I don't know if they're willing to work any sort of deal where Conor McGregor is allowed to do something like BKFC. I mean, we had Maymax, so, but I know what Conor McGregor's trying to do. He wants to get out of the UFC deal so that way he can do whatever the heck he wants. He wants to have some sort of fight in BKFC, bare knuckle with Mike Perry, or maybe he just wants to be able to do whatever Floyd Mayweather's doing, which could potentially mean getting sued again, Conor. Because good old Floyd is getting sued now. So Floyd Mayweather is now being sued by CSI Sports and CSI Entertainment, taking from Sports Illustrated. Floyd Mayweather is facing yet another lawsuit. This is just the latest in a long string of Mayweather's legal troubles of late. Yeah, of course. He has recently been accused of intentionally writing a fraudulent check to buy a watch worth over $200,000. It's also been ordered by a court to pay $1 million in child support back payments, in addition to $33,000 a month to a dancer for one of his clubs with whom he fathered a child with in 2021. And now, boxing promoter CSI Entertainment have filed a lawsuit against Floyd Mayweather, alleging the undefeated former world champion accepted millions of dollars in advance payments to secure rights to two high-profile fights before abandoning both deals. The complaint filed in New York on Thursday, first reported by TMZ Sports, claims that CSI paid a combined $4.5 million to First Apex Ventures, Mayweather's management company, for exclusive promotional rights to an exhibition bout against Mike Tyson and a rematch with Manny Pacquiao. Which the Pacquiao rematch would have been a professional fight. The lawsuit states Mayweather personally sanctioned the agreements. The situation is complicated by the fact Mayweather is himself currently pursuing legal action against First Apex Ventures and his former manager and is seeking $175 million in damages over allegations of fraud. CSI says it had already committed substantial time and resources promoting both events before learning it had been cut out of the picture, and that the loss of its exclusive rights amounts to serious financial damage for the company. The company is asking the court to issue an injunction preventing Mayweather from fighting Zambidis, about currently scheduled for next week, and to block the Netflix event with Pacquiao from proceeding in breach of its alleged exclusive deal. Now, I know why Nick Morganson posted this story in here. Because there's a certain somebody in here who used to do some work for CSI, Sports and Entertainment. Yes, I did. That was a different time period when things were first just starting up there with their Fight Sports website and their Fight Sports channel. And now you got this. And on one hand, I want to say, well, what did you think? What did you expect was going to happen when you're dealing with somebody like Floyd Mayweather, who's not just a shady boxer, but a shady promoter as well, and very shady with his money. But on the other hand, Floyd, man, when are you going to learn? I just went over the recent string of legal troubles, and that's just the recent string. Let's just Google Floyd Mayweather legal troubles and look at the list that comes up. When are you going to learn? Once a carny businessman, always a carny businessman, I guess. All right. I need to quickly get out of here. So let me just quickly recap UFC Vegas 119. They had the main event on Saturday. Manel Kape versus Kyoji Horiguchi. Fantastic matchup. Horiguchi seemed to get the better of him, and it looked like it was going to be like the first fight. Floyd will sadly never learn. He won't. He'll never learn. This is why people are going to continually come after him for his money. And especially when he makes deals like this and then tries to break off. It's like, no, we have laws here. We have contract laws and everything. We have business law. You can't do the things that you're doing. But Kyoji Horiguchi seemed to be getting the better of Kape. Trying to do counterattack while Kape was just standing. He was just trying to get a measure for Horiguchi because the two of them had faced off before in Ryzen, and Horiguchi beat him, and then Horiguchi ended up winning the Bantamweight World Grand Prix that they were doing that night. And my computer seems to have frozen for some reason. I hope you all can still hear me and see me. But my computer has gotten very laggy. Okay, that was weird. Kape basically tried to keep Horiguchi at bay, try to keep the distance with them. Low kicks, tried to work the right hand, but solid body kicks from Horiguchi in round one. Scores a takedown in round one, follows that up in round two. Lands a left hand, gets another takedown. Horiguchi just seemed to be in control from the top position. And then round three, Horiguchi misses a shot. Kape sees the opportunity, lands the counter punch. Horiguchi goes down, follow-up shots start to ring down. And Kape, during the ground and pound, comes up from behind on Horiguchi, lands the uppercut right to the chin. Horiguchi down and out. Fantastic performance from Manel Kape. Goes down probably 2-0, and then suddenly sparks a surge and gets it in the third round, gets the knockout. And now that's 4 straight knockouts. That's 6 knockouts in the UFC flyweight division. He is pretty much setting records now because he just broke the UFC knockout record for flyweight that was held by Joseph Benavidez. And now he has had such a run. He lost his first 2 UFC fights in 2021, lost to Makhachev in 2024. Outside of that, Kape's been solid. Potentially, he could get a title shot. He has called for a title shot. But again, I don't know what they're doing when it comes to Pantoja and his injury, if he's all recovered. And then if that means we're going to have Van Pantoja too at any point soon. He could fight could fight somebody like Tyra, who just unsuccessfully challenged Van for the flyweight title. But at that point, if Kape wins that fight, there's nothing you could do with him and then other than give him the Van Pantoja winner at that point. And then just quickly, UFC Baku. We'll talk more about this later on. Yeah, obviously not on this show. We'll talk about it later on during the week. Friday night on UFC on Fight IQ, the Puncher's Chance, the one that we're going to do for UFC Baku on Saturday. So again, let me plug that here. Special start time for Fight IQ, the Puncher's Chance. It'll be Friday night, June 26th, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Obviously, that's because UFC Baku is starting early on Saturday. Main event, Rafael Fiziev, Manuel Torres. Torres, hell of a striker. Fiziev, great striker, phenomenal chin. Fiziev needs the bounce back win. Manuel Torres, hell of a finisher. This is going to be a fun striking battle. We will discuss this more when we talk about UFC Baku on Fight IQ, the Puncher's Chant, coming up on Friday night. And now quickly, test your IQ MMA trivia. The questions from last week: how did Horiguchi win his first fight against Manel Kape? It was submission via arm triangle choke. The history of the underdog, the biggest underdog title wins in UFC history. No particular order: Juliana Pena defeating Amanda Nunes, Matt Serra defeating GSP at UFC 69. Actually, Pena defeating Nunes was at UFC 269. And then Holly Holm defeating Ronda Rousey at UFC 193. Only one combat sports superstar has the distinct honor of having held a UFC championship belt and simultaneously being the highest pay-per-view selling fighter in MMA history, headlining 4 of the top 5 highest selling UFC pay-per-views of all time. Who is it? The one and only Conor McGregor. All right, here are your questions for this week. First, Ian Garry is officially stepping up to challenge Islam Makhachev for the welterweight championship at UFC 330. Before Garry made his UFC debut in 2021, he held the welterweight title and was featured in which prominent European MMA promotion? Number 2, Conor McGregor announced that BKFC is heading to Boston's iconic Fenway Park. Fenway is legendary for baseball, but has actually hosted a major combat sports event before, including a boxing matchup featuring legendary heavyweight boxing champion Jack Dempsey. What other classic baseball stadiums have played host to some of boxing's old-time greats? And then lastly, UFC Freedom 250 made waves by taking place outdoors on the South Lawn of the White House. However, this wasn't the first time the UFC held a major event completely outdoors. UFC 112 was held on Yas Island in Abu Dhabi in 2010. That was an outdoor arena. What 2 title fights headlined that card? And bonus question, Yas Island gained a new moniker a decade later. What was or is that moniker? All right. Finally, that's going to do it for me here on Fight IQ. Like I said, a little bit of a rougher one, but thank you for bearing with me as I go through a pretty tough week here. Stay tuned to social media. We will let you know what is going to be the fate of this week's Tough Enough episode. But until then, make sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified of everything here at the Gun to the Bench Network. Ring that bell so you get notified of everything, every short, every video, every live stream, so much more. YouTube.com/ETB Network. If you're watching on any of the X platforms that are going out to right now, go to that YouTube channel and help us subscribe and help us grow there. But of course, like on X and of course, repost and quote post the show. Follow us at Fight IQ ETB. Follow the Empty the Bench Podcast Network at ETB Network, and follow me on social media at Thomas J. Albano. I will be back with you tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, where myself and Nick Morganson will reunite for a new edition of ETB Sports. We will have Tough Enough at some point this week, to be determined, to be announced. And then Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern, I'm on MTGP with Nick DiMartino. Followed by 9 p.m. Eastern, I am on for Fight IQ, the Puncher's Chance. All right, shout out to the 140 of you who have been watching throughout the night. Thank you so much. I'm pretty much toast, so I'm going to go relax. This is Tom Albano for Fight IQ, for the ETB Network, saying good night. Good night.